Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about and I like to update this on a regular basis, the amount of adverts in the best paid positions, best paid roles, best paid jobs in the country that are from the private sector, and how much from all the other sources such as NGOs and governments, clangos, that sort of thing. So, or the occasional private sector role, but it's from a company that's 100% dependent on government contracts, and their business they're being awarded without having to go through a competitive bid process. So looking at the top, this is the best paid 100 best paid jobs in Australia. Okay, so 12 of them are from the private sector, and 88 are from NGOs, governments, and quangos. Or private membership organisations. I guess there's a few of those in there as well. Remember, these are the best paid jobs. So typically, with NGOs and private membership organisations, the pay would be pretty lousy. It was almost an honorarium to do these sort of things, but no longer. These are the best paid jobs. Now, what does this mean for the Western economy, for the capitalist economy, for wealth creation, for generating future wealth? Well, it's not a good look. If your best paid jobs are for jobs that create no wealth at all, but are dedicated to social engineering, then you can sort of get an idea from that just how in control the globalists really are. And just to illustrate the point here, here's a large. This is a large retail organisation. They're hiring or they want to hire. They're advertising for like a executive vice president of data analytics. That's really it. So you're crunching all the numbers and looking at trends and statistics and so on. It's a pretty senior gig, and they want a super well qualified person. The 3 PhDs and a million years experience and so on. So they want an awful lot. They really want a high-powered, hard-bitten professional. So now the job actually pays, passably well. Doesn't pay a lot. I would have thought it would have paid a bit more for a role like that. But anyway, it pays okay. But at the same time, they're out looking for a director of diversity and inclusion. Now, this person will produce no wealth, create no wealth, will build, create, produce nothing. Their job is simply to not hire straight white people or straight white males. Their job is to elevate unqualified black lesbians into positions of authority and so on. So you couldn't imagine a more destructive force, and a role that would directly subtract the wealth or the capacity to generate new wealth and to be efficient or more efficient that this organisation could have. So they're a destructive dead weight around the neck of this organisation. But this role pays, the diversity role, that's comparable, like on their like organisational chart. They're supposedly the same seniority. These two roles, the executive chief, the head guy with data analytics, and the diversity role, are supposedly the same level of seniority. But the diversity role gets paid nearly $100,000 a year more than the data analytics role. So now that's sort of quite a bit. It's that's a significant difference. It's not like it's $5,000 more or $1,000 more or something like that. It's $100,000 more. So in terms of how the company values the two roles, the far more important role, which is commercially a critical role for the success of the organisation, pays substantially less than the one that's destructive to the organisation. Now, I get the flavour of the month and the fads, and I get all that, but these. This organisation gets substantial government breaks, and they look the other way for oligopoly practices and things like that. So my sort of take is that the government or the left wing government said, look, we'll let you keep your oligopoly. We'll look the other way at your illegal trade practices and things like that. But in return, you have to do this. You have to put 100 black lesbians into positions of authority. I assume there's been some backroom deal like that, because it's hard to find an example as classic as this of how an organisation will willfully set about its own self-destruction if it had to compete in the market. Willfully set about its own self-destruction and pay someone handsomely to do that. So this person with benefits and whatnot will be the diversity role would be in the top 1 in 300, maybe 1 in 320 odd people will be paid that sort of money. So it's quite well paid in the overall scheme of things. So and that's to play a direct, clear role in destructive commercial behaviour. An organisational destructive behaviour. So anyway, that's outside. But coming back now to the issue of how such a small number of private sector jobs exist in the best paying. This is an absolute and clear, emphatic demonstration that capitalism no longer exists in the West. It's completely flipped. It's now a planned, organised, managed, centralised economy along globalist lines. And the plethora of jobs that are created for, in the NGO sector and the amount of money that they pay. There's 3 day a week jobs that don't sound that senior. In amongst NGOs that are being paid 3 times the average wage, and these are for young people, agitators to get out on the street, stir up the uni kids and that sort of things, or those sort of roles. They're well paid and quite numerous today, and the list goes on and on of society and community engagement officers, which are, if you read between the lines, they're simply there to spread propaganda around the community through the persuadable public, as it's cynically referred to in the United States. And even things like there's little clubs and so on. Like there's a witches club, pretend witches. It's kind of silly and childish, and there's a lot of women go there, but there's an NGO that sends a professional agitator to the so all these little social clubs around the place that you think are quite innocuous and irrelevant, and there's only a dozen people meet once a month and that sort of stuff. It doesn't matter. That appears on the radar of the globalist activist NGO, miasma, and they will send an activist, an agitator there to stir that crowd undercover. If you challenge them directly, they will fess, but for the most part, they go under. They fly under the radar in terms of their presence, and they just go there. The idea of stirring up hatred and every opportunity to say straight white males caused this climate change and so on. And they just push the globalist talking points. The whole idea, of course, is to undermine Western society. All straight white males are Hitler and so on and so forth. So they're just pushing that narrative, but there's no area they believe is irrelevant or should not attract their attention. It's an absolute carpet bombing approach to propaganda, and those jobs are also quite well paid now. You can look at a factory manager running a factory will be paid substantially less than a university provocateur, agitator, and that's the insanity of the world we're in now. The people who are associated with destroying Western society are now far better paid than anyone who's existing on any sort of merit or adherence, if you like, to the capitalist principle. The Soviet communists did this. They created these jobs like the committee for the inclusion of women in factories. They had gazillions of these sort of equivalent NGO committee membership type organisations, paid for by the communists, by the central sort of planning communist directorate, and they paid these jobs quite well, and so they mostly put women in there, and or ideological hacks, I guess, if it was prestigious, but otherwise putting women in there. And these were paid as well as a factory manager would get, or anything else, in order to create this twisted illusion of equity that the Marxists still clung to in spite of the failures of central planning. And but when the communist regime fell over in 1990, 1991, in the Soviet Union, all these jobs disappeared. And suddenly these women had to go back to being kindergarten teachers and hairdressers and so on. And in a real economy, those jobs don't exist. But what we've got in the West now is that there's been meteoric growth in the last 20 years of what you would call centrally planned, central committee, communist, Marxist type jobs, the NGO jobs. And when you've got the 100 best paying jobs in the country, only 12 of them are in the private sector, and 88 of them are quangos and government departments and membership organisations, then as an economy, as a capitalist economy, assuming you can even still call it that, then you've got a serious problem. Now, one other thing, let's suppose that the private sector, well-paid private sector jobs actually are still out there, so they still exist. They haven't gone away. It's just that they're not advertised. It's now a small group of people who divvy up these jobs as gifts and patronage amongst themselves. Well, that's just as bad as the jobs not existing. That just means that the whole thing has become corrupt and an internal gift-giving patronage type process where a bunch of corrupt parasites, just give the jobs to each other and their mistresses and their buddies and their hackmates and all that sort of stuff. So that's as bad as the jobs not existing. Well, almost as bad as the jobs not existing. It still means unqualified, undeserving, parasitic people are being awarded these jobs and presiding over the destruction of the private sector. It doesn't matter which way it occurs, but that it occurs is the issue. But again, the meteoric increase and rise in the amount of these communist type jobs with the NGOs and so on, where their only role is to destroy Western society. I mean, it's insane. You're being a Tacitus today. You're Pushback Channel. Thank you for listening.